What's up, Elmbrook? Greetings to all of you online. I'm specifically going to give a shout out to St. Joe, the chapel there. They allowed me to be able to come here today and speak. I was originally scheduled to actually be with you live on your stage, so bless you for allowing me this opportunity. It is fun to be with you. My son and I have been in 2 sessions already. You're going to meet him in a little bit. And let me just say, this session is on parenting. And you just got to know at the start, you are looking at a dad who is not perfect. You're looking at it, they start clapping, that's great. I have had a wayward daughter. I'm going to talk about that. My children are 33, 30, 23, and 27. I've been parenting for 113 years. I'm taking credit for every year, baby. You don't just say 33 years. No, add them up, because if y'all got kids, they're all different. You take credit for every year and even the months if you can add them up. And so as I come, you need to know I come humble, I come honest. I'm a preacher, and I'm going to say some things on this stage about things I went through that you go, my goodness, that guy went through that stuff? I stand here not believing that I survived some of the stuff I survived as a parent. If you're here and you have a wayward child today, I'm going to be one of the guys that afterwards you're going to want to come up because I want to hug you. I have a heart for you. Previous to having a wayward child, I was one of those youth pastors who, when my kids were young, go back to my Alan, he's 33 here. I mean, I was like, my kids are not going to give me any trouble. Wrong. I had 2 boys. They're both pastors now, and they were compliant. Alan was tough as a child. I used to call him my little Hitler. I thought he had a shot at it, man. He was strong-willed, and he kind of did it his way. His brother Josh is planning a church out in Camden, New Jersey. Alan travels with me. We speak together. And then I have 2 daughters. Now, there is where I met some drama. And so if you're here today and you got daughters, I get it. And I'm going to talk honestly and openly, because as a parent, I'm going to tell you what happens. When your children are born, you start wondering from the get-go, I wonder if they're going to be okay. They're choked right now. My youngest daughter, she has a little baby that's 2 weeks old. The other day, that baby choked. I wonder if it's going to be okay. I'm like, it's fine. But when you have that first little child, you wonder, is it going to be okay? And then you get up, you wonder, will they ever go to the bathroom on their own? And then you wonder, will they ever be able to dress it? Will they ever sleep through the night? That's what you wonder in the beginning. And then, you get to the middle school years and you wonder, are they going to be okay with that different thing about themselves? Are they going to be able to survive all the middle school drama, all the social media? I wonder if my kid's going to make it through this incredibly tough stage. And then they get into the teenage years and you wonder where they are. Where are they really where they say they are? And then when you get adult children, you wonder what nursing home they're going to put you in. I mean, you wonder from the day they're born to the end. And I'm a pastor, man. I know all the verses. I can quote them all. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builder labors in vain. That one's made in prints and put up on big flannel things and hung around our houses because it looks good on the wall. Scripture verses look great on the wall. Sometimes they're a little harder to get in the real, just everyday stuff. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. It sounds great. What do you do when you can't find your daughter? When mine went wayward and I would go and preach at places like this, and they would say, look, y'all heard the name of the organization I lead is called Winning at Home. And they would introduce, here comes Dan Seaborn from Winning at Home. I didn't even know where my daughter was. She ran away. And I'm walking up on the stage to talk about winning at home. I felt like a total fraud. I felt like a loser. I thought, what's wrong with me? Not realizing God's trying to teach me more than I even knew He could teach me. And today, I'm going to give you some principles and ideas. So if you're here and you have young children, I got what I call the 3 C's for children. And if you've got a teenager, I got what I call the 3 T's for teen. And I probably won't get all the way to the end of it, but I'm going to get through as much as I can. Because when you're parenting young children, I just tell you there's a few simple things that you need to focus on. I'm not going to give you 5,000 principles that will overwhelm you. So I'm just going to tell you a few things and show you how the Lord allowed them to come alive in my life and through my life. The 3 C's of children that are coming up on the screen. The first one is this. In your children, number 1, you got to make sure you are building character. Now listen to me, gentlemen. Character is being built all the time, at your house, all the time. Children are watching your life. And I always just say to parents, children have built-in crap detectors. They can tell if you're shooting them a line of crap. Children can tell. So as a dad, if I tell my child, now you need to make sure you don't lie and cheat and steal, and then I lie and cheat and steal, they will go, this isn't right. Character is who we are as people. And as men today, look around the room, guys. We're the adults now. Do you remember when you were a little kid? And just picture yourself, go back to the age of 9 or 10, and you walked through that door, and you walked into this place. Those of you online, look at the room around you. When you were 8 or 9 or 10, and you walked in and you saw a group like this, you would say to yourself, oh, wow, a lot of adults here. You'd also have this thought, wow, they're really old looking. You did. I mean, I was 5, and I saw people of my age, I'd be like, it's almost over. I mean, that's just the way it is. Guys, we are the adults in the room. The question today is, are we men of character? Like right now, if your kids really knew everything that's going on in your life, would you say, hey kids, just follow that example and you'll be really good? Because that's what matters. We spend our life trying to get all this money and get the right house and get the right place. And then we're gone, and the kids are going to be thinking, what legacy did they live? Were they honest? I remember a while back when my mother passed away, and we were looking through all of her stuff, and all the mail came, didn't find one thing that didn't match her life. And in our box of secrets, do our secrets match our life? The life that we portray, the life we want our children to see? Are we the real deal? I mean, come on, guys. We want our children to be children of character. Then let's be men of character. And let me just tell you, so you don't think I'm sitting up here walking around saying I memorize Scripture all day long with my children. That's not how character is built. In fact, I'm asking my son Alan, like I say, he's 33, he travels and speaks with me. I asked him just to walk on stage for a second and talk about how character, because see, we're adults, right? I want you to hear what he was thinking back when I thought I was building character into his life. I want you to hear some of the things he was feeling and thinking as a little boy. So take it away, Alan, and tell him what you saw.
Like you said, I want to share some of the stuff that in the moment I wasn't saying, hey, thank you, Mom, thank you, Dad, for doing these things that are building character in our lives. Because when we're kids, what we're growing up in and what we're around, it just feels normal, right? So if you think back to your childhood, you assume that the things that are happening for you are just kind of the normal things that happen to children. But now, with the perspective of being an adult and looking back and saying, wow, some of the things that Mom and Dad did were really intentional to create an environment where we were building character. And so I thought back through, usually after dinner, we would have, my dad found these little, it almost looked like a deck of playing cards, but each of them on the front had a picture from a Bible story, and on the back was like the kid version of this Bible story. And we would read those after dinner and talk about, okay, now that we know this, how does this apply to our lives? And that was something intentionally, every single night that we had dinner as a family, that would take 5 or 10 minutes, but it normalized in our home talking about what God was doing in our lives. So when we were going through something tough later, when we were going through something good later, it wasn't weird to talk about what God was doing in our lives. And then they took something that now I think back and go, wow, that was a big sacrifice for my parents to do this. Because at the end of the night, after all the teeth had been brushed and everyone was finally ready for bed, they started this thing where my dad mostly came up with a way to put different Bible verses to song. So some of them were, I mean, you've seen him, he's pretty high energy. So this was undoing a lot of what was done of winding down and getting ready for bed, right? Which I think, man, that was a huge sacrifice, because finally getting the kids in bed, that's like finally free time. That's like I can finally do my thing now. But after we get ready, we'd wind down, we're getting ready for bed. There were these Bible verses put to song that we would sing. And once we got one down, they would add another one. And by the time it was all said and done, there were probably 20 Bible verses that we were singing every night before bed. And I haven't sung any of those verses, and I won't sing for you now, in probably 17 or 18 years. But those verses, I know them just like that. And what I didn't realize is on purpose, Mom and Dad were taking time to build Scripture into our lives, into the way that we thought. But I also want you guys to know our home was a place where we had a lot of fun. It wasn't just this monk-like thing where we're singing verses and all that. Like, we had a lot of fun at home. And I can remember one of the hottest games for us as children. Our family is hyper competitive, okay? So this started all the way when we were really young, but to this day, my brother lives out of state, but when he comes in town for Christmas or whatever, we'll play a little 21 with the three of us, and often the game of basketball ends with one too many sharp elbows thrown and someone slams the ball down and we go inside. And he's 50, whatever, 7, I'm 33, my brother's 30, and that's the level of competitiveness in the home. He really does, actually. So one of the hottest games I can remember with this competitive family, my parents would sit on the couch. We had this really weird designed house where there was a stairway that went up to the second floor, like in the entryway, but all throughout the rest of the house, you could go from the entryway to the living room to the kitchen. Then there was a door, and you could go into a bathroom, another door into a bedroom. You could go around the whole house in one big circle. And Mom or Dad would sit on the couch. They'd blow up a balloon. And we would take turns, one at a time, trying to run around the entire house, and you'd try to make it back before this balloon hit the ground. And they would sit. Guys, I remember playing this game for hours. Now I feel so bad for Mom and Dad sitting there. How many times can you compliment someone for making it back before the balloon hits the ground? Like, oh, you did it again. That's amazing. That's a new record, right? But they sat and they did this to make our home a place that was fun for us to be. And we would keep track who got it the most time. You know, we're competitive, so we're doing our thing. One of my other favorite things I think back on and remember is we're a huge NBA family. We grew up collecting basketball cards. So today, I'm guessing most of you guys didn't grow up collecting basketball cards, but maybe baseball or football or Pokemon or whatever, right? We grew up, we were looking for David Robinson cards, mostly, is what my dad told us to get. We should have been getting Michael Jordan cards. That'd be better. So now I know you're opening cards with your kids. You're looking for Giannis and Luka and all that stuff. But we were going for David Robinson. And we would, every now and again, we'd save up our money and go buy a $3 pack of cards at the grocery store. Every now and again, when we finally were winding down for bed, when it was finally time to go to sleep, we had done our verses and we had amped up the energy and wound it down one more time again. As Dad was walking out of the room, when he went to turn the lights off, he'd turn and he'd say to me and my brother Josh, "Hey guys, don't forget to check under your pillow." And what that meant, we knew immediately, Dad had stuck a pack of basketball cards underneath our pillows and undone the winding down again for the third time that night. And we were so excited. We'd jump up, we'd sit on the edge of that bed, and we're looking for that David Robinson, we're looking for Shaq, we're looking for whoever. And when I think back on those moments, Still today, we collect basketball cards, me and him and my brother Josh. And it's been something that has been a way that we've stayed bonded together. We've got a text thread, the three of us, talking about, hey, this is what I'm buying right now, this is what I'm selling right now, today. Because of the memories that were created in these little moments. And guys, I want you to get that I thought, growing up, man, my dad and my mom, they're just super creative. They're coming up with these ways to memorize scripture. They're coming up with a game that all it requires is a balloon, and they're buying little $3 packs of cards. I realize now they were just really cheap, right? This doesn't take an insane amount of money, but it does take a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of energy. And your kids at the young children stage aren't going to say thank you right now. But in 15 years, in 20 years, they'll look back and say, wow, Dad, you were really building into me. And I'm grateful that you took the time and took the effort to do that. So keep doing it, guys. Right now, it's worth it.
It's good, Al. Thank you. That's awesome. And I think I wanted you to hear that because that's from a kid's view, see? And I want you to get, those of you who have those young children in that early, pre-adolescent stage, you have the ability right now to shape your children's life, not through great money sacrifice, through life. Don't miss it. Don't miss it today. And then the key, after you realize I'm building character all the time, is this. This is really huge. The second C of children is be, you ready, consistent. In other words, relentless. This is tiring. This right here is where the rubber meets the road, man. Consistency builds security. You need to know that. When you give your children consistency, it builds security. Show me a child whose parents are all over the place, not consistent, not loving each other, fighting all the time. You'll see a child who's really struggling and insecure. And you as an individual, I have a situation right now. My daughter went through a really tough divorce, and the children live, sometimes with the dad and sometimes with her. It's not easy, but I've said to her, be consistent. Because that child needs that security from consistency. And I want to show you what happened with me and my wife, Jane. So we had our 4 children. I was a youth pastor for 10 years. The Lord blessed the youth ministry right straight across the lake in Holland, Michigan. And, man, I watched these teens, and literally, we at one point had 500 or 600 teens in the youth group, so I got to see many students come out of this youth group, and I would watch parents who I considered incredibly conservative. I mean, I remember one set of parents were so conservative they didn't believe their children should ever eat any candy, and I remember thinking, wow, that's tough, and just their rules and regulations, they had all kind of guidelines, and I remember watching parents like that, and I thought to myself, oh, those kids aren't going to do well. And then I remember watching really liberal parents that I thought, you can't let your kids have that kind of freedom. They're going to ruin their lives. And as a youth pastor, I watched parents on both ends of the spectrum raise those children up. And sometimes, with the incredible conservative views, no matter how weird I thought they might have been, kids turned out great. Sometimes they didn't. And the liberal, same way. I would watch incredibly liberal parents that I would think there's no way the children can handle that much freedom, and the kids handled it great. Other times they didn't. And I said to my wife one day, I said, babe, there's something these parents must be doing consistently that is making a difference in these kids' life. Because look, all these parents do it different ways. And I'm real big on telling parents, you have freedom to parent the way you choose as long as you are seeking to follow God's ways. You have total freedom. You can be more conservative, more liberal. I'm not here to decide. You get to decide. And I said to my wife, we need to find out what's the consistent thing they're doing because we wanted to be consistent. Now, I'm going to show you guys why this is such a huge deal raising your children. So I said to Jane, we're going to take out really conservative, middle of the road, and really liberal parents. We're going to take them out to dinner. 3 sets whose children have turned out great. By the way, let me add into here, don't judge your parenting until your kids are 30. That'll help you a lot. It'll help you a lot. So I took these parents out, and we took them out for dinner, and they didn't know we were taking them out for dinner to ask them questions about their life. But I said to them, what was it you did? What was it you did? What was it you did? Your children have turned out great. What are some of the things that happened in your home? And so Jane and I went to dinner with all of them, and then I have this thing in my life that a 94-year-old taught me how to do. Her name is Mary Gee. She taught me how to just listen to the Lord. It's something I've developed over many years. And I said to my wife, babe, I want you to go and seek the Lord. And I'm going to go seek the Lord based on these conversations. And after we've had our time of prayer and seeking the Lord, let's come back together and let's establish what we're going to call Mom and Dad's guidelines for the homes. And that's what for the home. And that's what we did. We established, watch this, 5 guidelines that we felt the Lord laid on our heart that we needed to consistently teach our children. We didn't want to be parents who had 4,000 rules. I grew up in a rules home. She didn't grow up in a rules home. So we knew it can go both ways. And so we established what we call Mom and Dad's guidelines for the home. Just 5 of them. We prayed about it. We sought the Lord. And then we created it in this little placard. You're looking at the placard itself. This sits at our house. If you go to our house right now, you will see it sitting there. If you walk in our house, my children have seen this. He saw it when he was a little boy. I established it really early, and here was why. I watched all those teens in those youth group. And again, remember I told you, I said to myself, our kids will never really rebel, but we better have some guidelines. So we established them. I remember when Alan was young, I would sit it, like he talked at the dinner table. I would sit it out, and I would bring the kids in, and we'd talk about these things. And I would say to them, hey guys, like the first one on here, just to tell you, one of them says, only positive attitudes allowed. Let me tell you what that means. When our children had bad attitudes, we corrected it. We didn't just let them sit there and say bad things and have bad attitudes and just go, yeah, unchecked. We didn't do that. And let me tell you something about these guidelines. They applied to the mom and the dad in the home too. I can remember a time when Alan went over, picked this up, and walked over to me and said, Dad, I think you need to change your attitude. Because these guidelines for our home were for everyone in the home. And here's what I said to my kids when they were very young. My youngest daughter, Anna, this was established even before she was born, but she heard it out of the womb as she grew up. I said to them, hey guys, this is Mom and Dad's guidelines for the homes. If you ever decide that you don't want to live by these guidelines, you can't live here. You said, that's harsh. I know. But Jane and I believed, as we prayed and sought the Lord, that this, see, watch this. I didn't tell my children, I'm kicking you out of the house. I never said that to my children. I said, if you don't want to live by these guidelines, you're saying, I don't like this house. Now I'm going to tell you guys, and this is why I'm showing you this thing. So my children, my 2 boys grew up, followed these, no problem. My first daughter struggled with it a little bit, but never to the extreme my youngest daughter did. Her name is Anna. I have permission to share this story. Anna got to the age of 16. She got involved with a drug guy in our community. He was older, and he convinced her that I was not a good father and I was a bad person, etc. There's a thing called Stockholm Syndrome, and I think he got her into that syndrome. Satan was after her. Satan was after our family. I'm just an honest preacher. He beat the hell out of us. I was ready to quit ministry. I remember one day saying to my wife, I'm going to quit, babe. I can't travel around the country and speak not knowing where my daughter is, because she got so bad into drugs and that kind of thing that she came to us one day and said, I can't. I remember when she came and said, I can't live by the guidelines of this home anymore. And I said, oh, Anna, that means you can't be here anymore. She said, I don't want to be. And I remember the day Jane and I stood in the parking lot of the ministry called Winning at Home. And my daughter drove up in her little white Jetta. I can just about draw for you a picture where I was standing, my wife holding my arm, my daughter looking, saying, well, bye, Mom and Dad, I don't know if I'll ever come home. And she drove to South Carolina. I didn't even know if she'd make it there. I didn't know if she had enough money to get there. I knew she was on drugs. And as a dad, my little girl, Anna's nickname was Bubbly. She was my easiest child. She was my funnest child. My kids are fun, but she was the crazy and funnest. She was the joy of my life. And she drove out of the parking lot with her mom holding my arm crying, and we prayed. And that began 5 of the longest years of my life. To lead an organization, to still travel and preach, and to realize that the very guidelines that I believed the Lord had given us for our home had now caused her to say, I don't want to be here. She left. She should be dead. She was beaten one night so severely with a baseball bat in a gang situation that she shouldn't even be alive. I couldn't even look at the pictures because, hey, I'm a dad. And I love Jesus and everything, but I could still take a couple people out. If y'all ever had your daughter be abused, you know exactly what I'm feeling. There's nothing like it. Helpless, laying her before the Lord going, Lord, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to go on in life knowing my little bubbly daughter is being abused right now, Lord. I can't do that. I don't even know where she's at, Lord, but I know from what I'm seeing, it's not good. I had police coming to my door. One day the police walked in the office at Winning at Home. At the ministry I lead, walked past all the employees. I have my office as the corner office. Let me just tell you, if the police ever come, you don't want the corner office. You want the front office, so they walk right in and stop them right there. They walk through everybody getting to me. The policeman, it was a policeman and a policewoman, I remember the policeman said, hey, by the way, I was where you preached Sunday, great sermon. And I remember thinking, shoot. And I said, that's not why you're here, is it? He goes, no, we're here. We were really concerned about your daughter. And I remember they talked to me, and then I remember they prayed with me. And then I remember they left the office. Alan came and knocked on the door and said, Dad, you okay? And I said, no. And he came in, he prayed with me. It was tough, guys. Toughest thing I've ever been through in my life. And I want to just show you guys that the Lord has a plan even when you can't see it. And so that day, the police left my office. Alan came in, prayed with me. And then right after that, my assistant walked to the door, knocked on the door. Hey, Dan, I need to talk to you. I said, not right now. I don't want to talk. Well, I need to tell you, you got a phone call you really need to take. I'm like, no. I said, you know what? Police were just here. I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm struggling as a parent. And she said, well, you need to take this phone call. And I pick up the phone, resentful. I don't want to do it. And I pick it up, and it's, just to make a long story short, it was Zondervan, the publishing company. Seriously, guys, I want to tell you what happened that day. I picked up the phone. I said, hello, this is Dan. This is really what happened. That day, right after the police left, the president of Zondervan said to me, hey, Dan, we've been in our office, and we've been talking about who we think would be really good at writing a book on parenting, and we've chosen you. I put it over the receiver. I was like, God, are you serious? Are you kidding me? You know where I'm hurting right now. And I remember saying, I'll think about it. And I remember then calling my wife and saying, hey, babe, I got to come home and talk to you. Our daughter's in real trouble, and the police are just at the office. And by the way, they want us to write a book. I want to show you that I did write a book. It was called Nurturing Great Kids. I started writing it in the middle of pain. I'm not showing you this to try to get you to buy it. That's not why I'm trying. I want to show y'all something. I started writing this book on nurturing great children. It's a little devotional book. I wrote it, and I'm going to tell y'all that I would send it to the Zondervan, to the publishing house, and they would call the office and say, Dan, this stuff is so good. And I remember going, so good. I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm hurting. I'm dying over here. And I remember telling my wife, I said, I wish that they wouldn't put my name on this book. I wish they'd just put it out there to the masses, no name or anything. You guys, it came in the mail. I didn't even see it or anything. It came in the mail. My name's not on the cover. It's inside, it's not on the cover. Love it. Because I believe this is a book, listen, the Lord allowed me to write. And I never would have known some of the stuff I know in this book if I had not been able to experience His mercy and His grace through a wayward child. And I want to stop a second and say to some of you who have a little child who's wearing you out, or have a teen that's wearing you out, you don't know what God's bigger plan and purpose is that you cannot see. This book, I know it's my book, but I'm going to tell you, this book, I use the book myself. In fact, Jane and I, we use it for our devotions. I'll read one and I'll look at her and I'll go, that is good. And I'll say to her, I don't remember writing that. Because I went to Starbucks at Target. That's where I would sit, the little Starbucks at Target, and I would write it. And what I'd do is, if you go to Target, it's usually a mom walking in with all the kids, and I just wouldn't go, well, Lord, thank you, those aren't my kids, but let me write something about them. You know what I mean? That's what I did. And I give testimony to the fact that I believe the Lord allowed this to happen for good things to come from it. And today I want to say to every parent in here, I don't know where you're at, but God, my brother said this is a great line, God can write straight using crooked lines. And some of you today are doing your best to build character, and you're doing your best to be consistent, and it's still a tough situation. And I would say to you, do not give up. My daughter came home, guys. I want to just tell you, after 5 years, my daughter came home. And I got to tell you, I got to say to you, so when my daughter came home, she was sitting in the kitchen one day, just on a bar stool. My wife had gone to the grocery store. It was just me and Anna. And Anna's sitting on the bar stool, and I said to her, baby, why'd you come home? I said to her, baby, why'd you come back home? I want to show you guys what happened. It brings tears. Oh, gives me chills starting to tell you. She stood up. She walked across the room. She walked over to this little thing. Guys, she walked across the room. She picked it up, and she walked back over to me, and she said, Dad, because ever since I was a little girl, you created a home where I knew I was safe. And I woke up on a picnic table in South Carolina after drinking one night. It was 3:30 in the morning. I woke up on a picnic table outside in South Carolina, and I said to myself, what am I doing? I got a daddy who built a house that's beautiful, and he's created this environment that's safe for me. I'm going to go home where safety is. And I want to tell you guys, I didn't know when she was 2 that this would matter. I didn't know the consistency of saying, hey, babe, sorry, you're choosing to leave. You can't live here with drugs and all. You can't. You'll ruin our home. I won't allow that. I love you too much. And I love your sisters and brother. I love them too much. And I love your mom. I can't let you ruin our home. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but I was consistent. And the Lord blessed it. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, do it exactly this way and it'll turn out. I am not a cookie cutter parenting teacher. But I am you obey what the Lord lays on your heart for your family and your life. And I believe He will give you wisdom in knowing how to guide your children. And this stuff isn't easy. Parenting is hard. But your consistency will pay off. I'm not going to spend much time on it because I want to get to the 3 T's of teens, but the last thing I want you to do under children is celebrate, man. You celebrate with those kids. Like Alan said, hey, y'all remember when y'all were kids, you know what you loved? You loved when you had fun in your house. You loved it. And my dad was not that guy. I was scared in my home. I shared in the seminar I just did how when my dad would come home from work, my little heart underneath my shirt would beat like this because I thought, oh no, is he going to be mean today? He was just mean. I remember I told you, you're the adults in the room now. Your children or grandchildren, they all have an opinion about you right now. What kind of man do you bring into your house? Do you bring in a little piece of heaven or a little piece of hell? That's the question you got to answer. And I want you to understand, if you create a home of celebration, a home where your children feel safe and warm, can I tell you what in their mind, they think of that as heaven on earth. Wouldn't it be cool if someday when they get to heaven, they go, oh, it's a lot like Mom and Dad's house. It's a place of joy. That's your goal. And now I want to move to what I would call the 3 T's of teens. I want you to understand when those kids move from children to teens, there are different things. Here's the 3 T's of teens. The first one is you need to make sure you build trust. All those things you've tried to put into your life of your little preschoolers and then the kindergarten age and then up through elementary, if you teach character, it will hit them as teenagers. And let me tell you, in my home, we started calling this little build trust thing, we call it adult conversations. I would say to my kids, hey guys, say I'm going to pick my daughter Christina. When she's 14, we're sitting in the living room. This happened. And I said to her, Chrissy, can we have an adult conversation? Now, what's really cool when you do that, see, is you're kind of saying to your kids, I know you're a little older, and they already think they're adults. So when you call them that, they go, oh. I'm moving up in the world. I'm not like the little siblings. And you kind of trick them. And I said to Chrissy, Chrissy, can we have an adult conversation? She goes, yeah. And I said, your mom just left the house, and she said she was going to the grocery store. She said, yeah, that's what she said. And I looked at her and I said, do you think that's where she went? And she said, what do you mean? I said, do you think she went to the grocery store? She said, well, that's what she said, Dad. Why are you saying this? And I said, well, because I just wonder, do you believe your mom went to the grocery store? Do you think she might have gone to meet some other man? And she went, Dad. And I said, what? She goes, Dad, why would you say that? I said, I'm just asking a question. I'm just asking, do you trust your mother? And she said, yes, Dad, call her on her cell phone. I said, I don't need to. I said, your mom said she went to the grocery store, and I promise you, Chrissy, your mom's at the grocery store. She's a woman you can trust. I guess I ask you that question because, Chrissy, you're 14 now, and boys are going to start talking to you. They're these big old, hurly, ugly-looking things. They're going to start talking to you. They're going to start liking you and wanting to be with you. And some night when I call you and you're 16 and I call you on your cell phone and you tell me where you're at, I want to trust that that's where you're at. Don't you like it right now, Chrissy, that you can trust that your mom's at the grocery store? I do. I said, I always want to be able to trust you too. Okay? That's an adult conversation. And as your children enter that teen stage, talk to them about real life stuff. They get it. They're around it. Trust me, read some social media. They know what's going on. And as a parent, you need to make sure you're instilling, you're building trust into their life. And as you do that, number 2 here is you need to just stay teachable in the process because you're going to learn a lot about yourself. I learned so much about my life and who I am as a person, as a parent. Nothing has taught me more than going through these things I've gone through as a dad. I never knew what it really meant to trust God until I had totally lay my daughter at his feet and say, Lord, look, I wasn't praying, Lord, help her be in Sunday school. Lord, help her to be a music worship leader. Lord, here was my prayer. I was down to my last prayer. God, would you keep my daughter alive? I don't have any other prayer right now other than, Lord, will you keep her alive? Because she's about to lose her life. I was down. I wasn't praying, Lord, help her to pick out the right disc today to go to the prom. Help her to. I didn't get any of those prayers. It was, Lord, would you keep her alive? Watch this. And I had to surrender her completely to the Lord. I had to be so teachable because, like a lot of you guys, I like control. And when you have no control, you have to lay it at the Lord's feet. I remember one night, 2:30 in the morning, I'm sitting looking out the back window of my little area where I live, and I was looking at the moon, and I was struggling like crazy. And I said to the Lord, I can't do this anymore. And this is what the Lord spoke into my spirit, because I said, God, I can't do it. I'm done. I'm not sleeping. I'm not eating well. I'm worrying all the time. And I felt the Lord said, give her to me. But Lord, give her to me. Like totally let her go? Mm-hmm. Like Dan, if she dies, I got her. And I sat that night and I cried and I gave it to her. And then the Lord, listen, he gave me this thought. He said, Dan, do you remember my first kid? What was his name? And I said, Adam. And he said, how'd he do? What do you mean, how'd he do? How'd he do? I said, he screwed up. And he said, yeah, and I'm God, and my first kid screwed up. You're okay. It's a huge thought. If God of the universe, who is the perfect parent, has a kid that screws up, then there's a good shot mine's going to screw up too. And I tell you, I started laughing. You guys, I started laughing out loud. And my wife came in, what's wrong? I'm happy. Our daughter's wayward. I said, but God's got her. God has got that girl. And I learned that night that I can trust God even when I don't know what that means. And I want to say to you men today, you got a 2-year-old, you got a 6-year-old, you got a 9-year-old, you got a 14. Yours is 33. Trust God with that child and allow him to teach you what it means to trust him. And I got to tell you, I pray with my wife every night. I pray a blessing over her. I've been doing it for 30 years. If I was teaching on marriage, I'd be teaching you to pray with your wives. I say to guys all the time, I don't have any problem talking to you about, hey, if I said to you, hey, you need to have more sex with your wife, guys are like, I know. If I said, you need to pray with your wife, oh, that sounds uncomfortable. I'm like, yeah, think about that. Being totally naked with her is no problem, but praying with her scares you to death. How weird is that? And I'm not even doing a marriage thing, but I got to throw that in there. And I want to say to you, so I pray with her every night. And this kid over here, Alan, my oldest, I'd had a really hard trip. I was in Canada speaking, long weekend. I came home, went to work on Monday, bad day. Everything went, you go to work and everything goes south. Had that day. I came home and I said to my wife, it was 5 or 6 in the evening. Alan happened to be over our house that night, and I said, honey, I'm going to bed. I'm not doing well. I went upstairs and I went to bed. And I was in bed and I fell asleep. I've been through hell as a parent. You say, I can't believe you said it out loud. Look, I'm a pastor. I went through hell as a parent. I'm just honest. I don't shoot the bull. I tell you the truth. As life, sometimes it ain't perfect. But by God's grace, I made it, boys. I made it because God is faithful. And I want to tell you this. I'm in bed. I'm asleep. I'm tired. My wife comes to bed. I hear her in there kind of getting ready for bed. Then she comes and lay down by me. All of a sudden, adult son knocked on the door before he left the house, and he just said, hey, Mom, can I come in a second? I'm laying on my pillow, half asleep. I hear my adult son, Alan, walk into my bedroom, walk over to his mom, and he said, Mom, I know every night Dad always prays a prayer of blessing over you, but he's asleep tonight, so would you be okay if I pray a blessing over you, Mom? And he prayed over her. And I remember laying there going, that is so sweet. And then he came around to my side of the bed and he just kind of punched me a little. He said, Dad. I said, yeah. He said, sorry you're not doing well, man, but I love you. I'm proud of you. I said, thank you, Alan. He said, can I just pray over you too? I said, yeah. So he prayed over me. Listen, this really happened. He prayed a blessing over me. I gave him a hug. He said, well, good night, Mom and Dad. I said, see you later, man. He left. He got right to the door of our room. Listen, he got to the door of the room and he said this, hey, Dad. I said, yeah. He said, Dad, don't forget to check under your pillow. No lie, guys. He had gone out and bought me this pack of basketball cards. And he wrote a note on it just saying, I know you have been pretty stressed out lately. Hope your trip to Canada was at least fairly relaxing. I hope this pack helps at least a little bit too, and don't ever forget to check under your pillow because I love you. Oh, I started just crying. I got up, sat on the edge of the bed, we opened it up, didn't get nothing. It was a terrible pack. I told him to go buy me another one. But we cried together. He left the room, and I said to my wife, my goodness, honey, you talk about full circle. I did that with him as a little boy, and now he did it for me. Hey, guys, I want to tell you something. You be faithful. You be consistent. I pray God's blessing over each of your children, that the principles and the guidelines you are living out will be the ones they grab and pass on to your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids. Because someday you'll be gone and they'll be in this arena, and I pray on that day they will get faith because you pass it on. God help us all, guys. All of us guys in here, we want to do it. We're asking you to help us do it. Put your anointing over us. Bless our lives. Bless all those men online. We want to be faithful men, and we love you today. In Jesus' name we all said, amen. Love y'all. Peace out.
Well, guys, we'll be back right away.